You're in a meeting. Your colleague presents an idea that's half-baked, full of holes. Your instinct? Tear it apart. Show everyone how smart you are. But pause. What if you're wrong? What if that flawed idea contains a seed of genius you're too arrogant to see? The person who always needs to be right never grows. The one who listens, even to the unwise, gains wisdom. This is the art of learning from others, a forgotten superpower in a world obsessed with proving oneself. Confucius, the great Chinese philosopher, lived over 2,500 years ago. He wasn't a born genius. He was a relentless learner. In Book 7 of the Analects, titled Transmission, he lays out his philosophy of learning and humility. This isn't ancient history, it's a blueprint for thriving in a world that demands constant adaptation. Imagine a man who, despite being a revered teacher, never claimed to be wise. He said, "I am not one who was born with knowledge. I love antiquity and diligently seek it." That's the mindset we need today. In an age where everyone brands themselves as experts, Confucius reminds us that true wisdom begins with admitting what we don't know. His life was a study in humility. He traveled from state to state, offering counsel to rulers, yet he always remained a student. He learned from the common people, from children, from the outcasts. To him, every encounter was a classroom. And this is why his teachings have endured for millennia. Because they tap into a fundamental truth: growth never stops. Whether you're a CEO, a parent, or a student, the principle is the same. The moment you think you've arrived, you've already started to decline. Confucius's path was not about accumulating titles or accolades. It was about continuous refinement of character. He believed that the purpose of learning was to become a better human being. Not to impress others, but to cultivate virtue. In a world that measures success by external markers, this is a radical idea. But it's also a liberating one. Because it means that no matter your station, you can always improve. You can always find a teacher. And you can always turn your weaknesses into strengths. This is the art of learning, Confucius style. It's not about memorizing facts. It's about transforming your entire being through observation, reflection, and action. So let's dive deep into this ancient wisdom and see how it applies to your life today. Confucius said, "When walking with three people, there must be a teacher among them. Choose the good and follow it, see the bad and correct it in yourself." This is the core of Confucius's teaching: everyone is a teacher. The wise person extracts lessons from every interaction. The fool judges and dismisses. Confucius wasn't naive, he knew people are flawed. But he saw that even flaws are lessons. When you see someone fail, you learn what to avoid. When you see someone succeed, you learn what to emulate. This is active learning, not passive observation. It requires humility to admit you don't know everything. It requires discipline to reflect on your own behavior. Confucius said, "I am not one who was born with knowledge. I love antiquity and diligently seek it." He didn't claim innate wisdom. He earned it through constant learning. In a world that celebrates expertise, Confucius champions the beginner's mind. The moment you think you've mastered something is the moment you stop growing. The true master is forever a student. Now, let's unpack this further. The phrase, three people, is symbolic. It could be your family, your colleagues, or strangers on the street. The point is that any group contains a teacher. But here's the catch: the teacher might not be the one you expect. It could be the person who annoys you, the one who disagrees with you, or even the one who fails. Confucius is asking you to drop your preconceptions and see everyone as a source of wisdom. This is not easy. Our egos get in the way. We want to believe we are superior. But Confucius says that attitude is the enemy of growth. Instead, adopt a posture of curiosity. When you meet someone, ask, "What can I learn from this person?" Maybe it's a new skill. Maybe it's a perspective you've never considered. Maybe it's a warning about a path that leads to ruin. The key is to be open. And then, after you learn, you must act. Choose the good and follow it. It means you integrate the lesson into your life. See the bad and correct it in yourself. It means you use others' mistakes as a mirror for self-improvement. This is a two-step process: observation and application. It's not enough to simply notice. You must change. Confucius himself modeled this. He said, "I am not one who was born with knowledge." He was a lifelong learner. And that's why his teachings still resonate. Because they are not abstract theories. They are practical strategies for living a better life. So, the next time you find yourself judging someone, stop. Ask yourself, what is this person teaching me? You might be surprised at the answer. Apply this to relationships. Your partner leaves dishes in the sink. Your child throws a tantrum. Your friend cancels plans again. Easy to get annoyed. But Confucius says, look for the lesson. Maybe your partner's messiness reveals your own need for control. Maybe the tantrum teaches you patience. Maybe the cancellation reminds you not to take things personally. Every conflict is a mirror. When you blame others, you learn nothing. When you ask, what can I learn here, you transform frustration into growth. Confucius taught that we should see the bad and correct it in yourself. That means when you spot a flaw in someone else, check yourself first. Do you have that same flaw? Can you improve? This isn't about letting others off the hook. It's about taking responsibility for your own growth. Relationships become laboratories of self-improvement. Let's delve deeper. Think about a recent argument you had. What triggered it? Now, instead of focusing on what the other person did wrong, examine your own reaction. Why did you get angry? What belief of yours was challenged? Often, our emotional responses reveal our own insecurities. For example, if your partner forgets an important date, you might feel unloved. But is that really about them, or is it about your own fear of being unimportant? By looking inward, you can address the root cause. This doesn't mean you ignore bad behavior. It means you use it as a catalyst for your own development. Confucius also emphasized the importance of choosing good influences. In relationships, this means surrounding yourself with people who inspire you to be better. But even negative relationships can be teachers. They show you what you don't want. They clarify your values. The key is to extract the lesson without being consumed by the negativity. Remember, you are not defined by the flaws of others. You are defined by how you respond to them. So, next time you feel irritation rising, pause. Breathe. Ask, what is this situation teaching me about myself? Then, take that insight and use it to become a better partner, parent, or friend. That is the Confucian way. At work, this principle is gold. You have a boss who micromanages. Instead of resenting them, ask, what can I learn about delegation from their mistakes? You have a colleague who takes credit. Observe how they navigate politics, and decide what you won't do. Confucius said, choose the good and follow it, see the bad and correct it in yourself. This is how you build a career. Every person you meet is a case study. The successful ones show you strategies, the failing ones show you pitfalls. But you must be humble enough to learn from both. In leadership, this is crucial. A leader who thinks they have all the answers stifles innovation. A leader who learns from their team creates a culture of growth. Confucius himself said, I am not one who was born with knowledge. Imagine a CEO admitting that. That's real power. Now, let's expand on this. In a competitive workplace, it's easy to see colleagues as rivals. But Confucius would say they are your best resources. The person who always delivers exceptional work. Study their habits. How do they manage their time? How do they communicate? The person who constantly makes mistakes. Analyze what went wrong. Is there a pattern? Could you avoid that same trap? This is not about copying blindly. It's about discerning what works and what doesn't, and then applying those lessons to your own approach. For example, if you notice a coworker gets promoted because they consistently share credit, you might learn the power of generosity. If another colleague gets fired for gossiping, you learn the danger of loose lips. Every office is a living textbook, but you have to be actively reading. Also, consider your own effect on others. Are you the kind of person others can learn from? Confucius would say that we should strive to be good examples. That means being mindful of how we act because someone might be learning from us. This creates a positive feedback loop. When you learn from others, you become a better teacher yourself. And that enhances your leadership, whether you have an official title or not. So, don't just go through the motions at work. Be a student of the game. Watch, listen, and adapt. Your career will thank you. This teaching is ultimately about yourself. Confucius said, "Is virtue far away? If I desire it, it is here." The same applies to learning. The moment you decide to learn from everyone, the lessons appear. But it requires a shift in mindset. You must become comfortable with not knowing. You must embrace the discomfort of seeing your own flaws. Confucius said, "I am not one who was born with knowledge." He modeled the humility he preached. Personal growth starts when you stop pretending to have it all figured out. Every person you meet is a teacher. Every situation is a lesson. The question is, you willing to learn? Or are you content to stay the same? Let's go deeper. The biggest obstacle to learning is the ego. It whispers that you already know enough. That you don't need to listen to that person because they are beneath you. But that ego is the enemy of growth. To truly learn, you must cultivate humility. This doesn't mean thinking less of yourself. It means thinking of yourself less. It means recognizing that your perspective is limited and that others have pieces of the puzzle you lack. Confucius was a master of this. He said, "I am not one who was born with knowledge." He didn't pretend to be a sage. He was a seeker. And that's what made him wise. Another aspect is self-reflection. Confucius encouraged daily introspection. He said, "I examine myself 3 times a day." This isn't about beating yourself up. It's about honest assessment. What did I do well? What could I improve? How did I treat others? By making this a habit, you create a feedback loop for continuous improvement. You catch your mistakes early and adjust. This is especially important when learning from others' bad examples. It's easy to see faults in others, but hard to see them in ourselves. Confucius says, when you see someone do something wrong, immediately check yourself. Do you do that too? Maybe not in the same way, but in a subtler form. This kind of self-awareness is the foundation of personal growth. So, start a journal. At the end of each day, write down one thing you learned from someone. It could be a positive lesson or a cautionary tale. Over time, you'll build a repository of wisdom. And you'll become a person who is constantly evolving. That is the path of the sage. Some critics say Confucius's approach is too passive. In a competitive world, they argue, you need to assert your own ideas, not just learn from others. But this misses the point. Confucius wasn't saying never speak up. He was saying listen first. Understand before you judge. In today's polarized society, we could use more of that. Others claim that learning from everyone leads to moral relativism, that you might learn bad behavior. But Confucius addressed this, choose the good and follow it. You have agency. You filter. The key is to remain open without losing your moral compass. It's not about copying everyone, it's about being discerning. The real danger is not learning too much, but learning too little. Let's examine these criticisms more closely. The first one, passivity. In reality, Confucius was a very active learner. He didn't just sit back and absorb. He engaged, questioned, and applied. The listening part is just the first step. After learning, you must act. Choose the good and follow it is an active verb. It requires you to make choices and change behavior. So it's not passive at all. It's strategic. In a competitive environment, the person who listens first has an advantage. They understand the landscape before making a move. They learn from the successes and failures of others, avoiding costly mistakes. That's smart, not weak. The second criticism, moral relativism. This misunderstands Confucius's teaching. He had a clear moral framework: virtue, righteousness, and propriety. He wasn't saying accept everything. He said choose the good. That implies a standard. You are not a sponge that absorbs everything. You are a filter. You take what is useful and aligned with your values, and you reject what is harmful. The challenge is to remain open without being gullible. It's possible. It requires critical thinking and a strong sense of self. Confucius himself was not afraid to criticize rulers and customs when they were unjust. So his approach is not relativistic. It's discerning. In our modern world, we are bombarded with information and opinions. The temptation is to either accept everything or reject everything. Confucius offers a third way: evaluate and integrate. Learn from diverse sources, but always apply your own judgment. That is the path of wisdom. So don't let these criticisms deter you. The art of learning from everyone is a powerful tool. Use it wisely. Your greatest teacher is the person you least expect. So tomorrow, when you meet someone, ask yourself, what can I learn from them? The arrogant will miss the lesson. The wise will seize it. That's the difference between stagnation and growth. Be the student. Always,